I'm Cynthia James, and this network is about changing lives one woman at a time.
Welcome to Women Awakening. I'm your host, Cynthia James. I have the distinct pleasure of introducing you to phenomenal women. Women who are way showers. They're independent, they're strong, they're entrepreneurs, and they are absolutely clear that there are infinite possibilities and potentials in this universe that we live in, and they're here to take advantage of it. I believe that this is a time for women emerging on the planet, that there's something in us calling us to bring more love, more care, more consciousness, more power to this planet to balance out some of the inequities. And so we do this every week. I introduce you to a new woman. We're on a lot of podcast places: Spotify, iTunes, iHeart, Spreaker, Amazon, YouTube video. You look for Women Awakening with Cynthia James. You can also go to my website, cynthiajames.net. There's lots of resources there, and you can join my private community where we have in-depth conversations, and there's classes and things for you. I want to introduce you to a woman, and I will talk when she gets on. I'll talk about how we met, because it was definitely serendipity. But her name is Alexia Parks. She's the founder and the president of 23Zip Incorporated, a public benefit corporation, home of the first food responders. Newsweek called her one of the 50 people who matter most on the net. And that was after her launch of votelink.com in 1995. It was the first successful electronic democracy system on the internet. So over her career, Alexia has launched 100 successful social impact projects, including setting up an outdoor education program for all elementary schools in Boulder in the 1970s. And she received funding from the City of Boulder, Colorado, to create the Energy Futures and Walking Cities conferences. Alexia Parks is an award-winning entrepreneur, best-selling author of 18 books, and chair of the Alexia Parks 10 Traits Leadership Institute, a tax-exempt organization founded in 1990. Alexia, welcome.
I'm so happy to be here, Cynthia, and this is a great audience to talk to, because women awakening and uplifting human consciousness has been my cause for all of my career.
I love that. So ladies, let me just tell you this. You never know when you're going to have an instantaneous connection. My husband and I were in Boulder in the tea house having lunch, and I see this woman at the counter, and I'm intrigued. There was something about her energy, and she was having a different kind of response to me sitting there. And I don't know, we met, and it was like instant. And I was like, oh, she's got to be on this podcast. So I'm so grateful that you came.
I'm so happy to be here. Yeah.
So I want to ask you how you grew up. I mean, when I look at your legacy, all these things that you've done, did you grow up in an entrepreneurial family? I mean, how'd you grow up?
I absolutely did. My parents, my mother and father eloped when she was 18. He was 2 years older, but she was in college studying to be a chemist. And he was, and studying to be an electrical engineer. They fell in love. It was during the Depression. And they ran away to Philadelphia. They were living in New York and got married. And he developed a successful business. He was a pioneer in his field. He brought my mother in because of her talents and knowledge and skills to be the vice president of the company. So the two of them always worked together. Whenever they had board meetings, she didn't go into the office per se, but whenever they had board meetings, he honored her intelligence. So I grew up with a father, and one of the things he told me early on that's guided my life as a vision is, if you can dream it, you can become it. And so I've always thought if I can dream something, then I can actually create it or become it. And that's been true because it's what you visualize, you create a cybernetic goal. And I've done that with the 100 projects because money has, a lot of women don't really care about money as the value for the worth. They care about doing something that is hyperlinked to their passion.
Absolutely. What you were saying about what your family believed, there's a song called I Believe I Can Fly. If if I can
Yes,
see it, I can achieve it, right? And so,
exactly.
well, and what I love about your father is that he recognized the worth and the brilliance of your mother, which was a beautiful example for you coming up to have the masculine see her and then I'm sure see you.
Yes, exactly. Because he was a mountaineer at the same time. He climbed mountains all over the world, wherever he could travel to them. And we used to go on walks and he would hold my hand and we'd talk about his values. And he'd say to me, you and I are both highly empathetic. And,
Ah,
and he just gave me that gift of confidence that I was like him in that important way. I believe, because I've written so many books, that the traits of a great leader are basically feminine. And when a
mm,
male can actually embrace some of those where they can cross the aisle, and likewise, women can cross the aisle between compassionate, collaborative, empathetic, and go to the other side where it's about competition, territorial, fight or flight. Um, they're both stronger because they can embrace the feminine values, which I call, sometimes you can't even use the word feminine, but they're
mm.
traits that I consider of a great leader. They happen to be the ones that most are associated with women, but when men exhibit them, they become great leaders.
Well, I completely agree with you. I do a lot of work with women. And so what you just said, is that the foundation of 10 Traits Leadership Institute?
Well, no, because 10 Trace Leadership began as a nonprofit focused on putting commuter rail on existing rail lines. And then
Ah,
and then I ended up getting the opportunity to launch a technology company, the first electronic democracy system and the most successful, and for which I was called one of 50 people who matter most on the internet. But then it evolved to um, then it evolved to the Education Exchange Network, because then I began writing a lot of books and using those to create courses that had professional development credit. And then in 1912, I was selected as a United Nations mentor to mentor a young African woman leader from Uganda, from the global South. And I mentored her for 18 years via Skype. And we became, of course, close friends. Mentoring goes both ways. I gave her all the information from First World Resource she needed to grow her business, and she, um, gave me ideas that I would not have had from this culture. And so, after 18 months in 2014, she became selected as the #1 social impact entrepreneur in the world at the
wow.
Fortune uh, and what was the other company? Goldman Sachs most powerful conference in the world for women. And so she was selected by Fortune as their #1 social impact entrepreneur. And she came out, and I'm not wearing the necklace today. Sometimes I do, but she gave me a beautiful necklace, and we've been friends, from that time to the present.
Well, what's incredible, mentoring, I think, is an essential gift that, and you do learn from one another. And I do work with women in Uganda, and we have a leadership retreat every year, and um, we follow up with mentoring. And so I think it's just such an important thing because you give the gifts of your wisdom and your knowledge, and then they give you the gift of their passion and their insights and their
And their
expanded awareness.
culture.
Yes,
And I will
yes.
say that also, that, her goal, and was successful, was to lift 200 young women out of the slums of Kampala by teaching them micro entrepreneurship, mentorship, and doing leadership training. And I was selected because I have skills across those sets. For example, my work today with 23 Zip, the social impact company, it's really about the healing power of food. We all know and have heard the term food as medicine, but very few people think of the extension, food as a medical prescription, because it's now, if you think about it, there was a time, and of course you go on in other places, there was a time when food was the healing force that could heal our bodies. We ate a lot of fiber. We ate a lot of things that were homegrown and fresh and healthy. And over the last 3 years, I have received federal funding, again, total synchronicity. I never went for it. It came to me by leaders in Riverside County who received the funding. They happened to see a website that had no business plan, but it had the opportunity and the vision of women who love to cook happily at home in their home kitchens, preparing delicious meals for their family and the elderly, people with health issues, and hungry families and children. And they gave me the first of 6 contracts, a total of $2.8 million over 3 years, just like that. And I'm not a cook. I'm one of those people that fall on the eater side. And I have a vision. I love to go to my daughter's house or other people who prepare a meal and sit as a guest. I love potlucks. But I created a menu planner called 23 Ingredients. And over the 3 years, we actually put out, prepared, and delivered almost 1 million meals that were based on about 60 to 70% high fiber from fresh local farms and produce and products, and good fats and a small amount of protein, about 2 to 3 ounces of protein. And in that time, we were feeding them to homeless people who had been placed in temporary shelters. We were able, through our deliveries, to measure daily improvements in their mental health. And that experience over the 3 years where they would improve their health, they get put into permanent housing, someone would take their place, that person's health would improve with our high fiber 23 ingredient menu planner. And out of that, I was able to create digital healthcare tools, online and in-person training programs, and the use of virtual mentorship, which I explained before, to help lift people out of poverty, give them the skills they need to improve both their health and that of their families. And when you feed the body, and especially the microbiome, which some people may know about, the microbiome will crank out chemicals that mimic pharmacy, but they are GABA, which reduces stress and anxiety, so your mental health improves. That's what we were seeing. They produce the serotonin that gives you that burst of a feeling of well-being. They give you dopamine that gives you that motivation to get up and take the next step on the road to your goal. And butyric acid, which heals leaky gut, and it's known to prevent colorectal cancer. And this is in science. It's based on 50 years worth of science research and includes some of the heavy things. And that's what is part of that passion of mentoring, is to see what happens when you watch people eat better food. So we have the digital tools that show how that happens. And that truly excites me. That I feel like that's really, after all these years, that's my legacy. So I went from Metro Rail to Education Exchange to my partner, Dr. Joel, said, you should honor yourself and the contributions you've made, and you should create the nonprofit in your name. So I had his name changed to my name, just to say there's a legacy here. But the truth is, when the projects and contracts came to me, it was during the time of COVID, when everything had closed down: grocery stores, restaurants, Meals on Wheels, feeding America, Hunger in America. And they saw our site with all these home cooks, and they thought diversity, diverse cultures, and close to the people they could serve. And so they just contacted me and gave us a first of 6 contracts.
I love that. Can you, for the people who don't know, what is a microbiome?
Okay, a microbiome, and it's a newly discovered 3-pound organ that lives in our colon, not the upper gut. So our lower gut has, if you remember, any of your readers have ever read the Dr. Seuss book, Horton Hears a Who.
Right.
And he holds up the dandelion and he lifts it to his big elephant ear, and he actually hears a community living on the head of this dandelion. So he was going to blow it with his trunk, and then he realizes there's life on this dandelion. Well, imagine that dandelion living in your colon. It's 50 trillion with a T bacteria, of which
Wow.
some are good and some are bad. If you eat a lot of meat, a lot of heavy meat eaters, you tend to feed the bad bacteria. But if you eat a lot of plant-based foods, and we include vegetables, fruits to feed it, it will produce all these positive chemicals because it's like a byproduct of the bacteria. If you feed it one thing and it, releases another, that's the chemistry that goes between your gut and the microbiome, which is a little 3-pound hairy universe like a dandelion, and 50 trillion employees. So I talk about them as our employees. They've been with us for all of human history, not just our own, but in preceding generations. And if you don't feed them, most people eat like a very low amount of fiber, stalk of broccoli, celery, carrot. They actually are starving and they begin to eat the walls of your colon. And that's what can create irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's disease, leaky gut, and so forth. And so people just have forgotten that 40, 50, 70 years ago, our major food was a lot of garden grown produce and then meat and fats, butters, and things like that. So it's high fat, good fat, butters, great cheeses, bries, high fat yogurt, and that gives you the energy of vital life. And it's a longevity strategy as well. So we have to make friends with it. And most people don't know it exists. I've asked the smartest people I can think of, if they know about the microbiome, and they say no. And I'm always amazed because I can go to groups with the heads of organizations. Nobody knows because it has to make its way back into the public demand, where people go to a doctor and instead of opening up the pharmaceutical cabinet, they say, can I have food as medicine? Because it's always been that way through human history. And there have been some, valuable, penicillin and et cetera over time, but it's become an epidemic of giving people pills and prescriptions that have side effects. Food has zero side effects. And that's the benefit when you feed. If you just think of a dinner salad with lots of different, any colorful greens and reds and, red bell peppers and this and that, you'd have in your kitchen, garlic, whatever. And we've created an app that actually guides people. So they can say, I want this, 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 this. And a licensed dietitian or healthcare professional, or even now psychiatrist, can say, we will give this to you and we'll see if your Medicare or Medicaid will cover the expenses.
Right. Well, that's incredible. Well, I think it's important to know, because we don't, when I grew up, my grandmother and my mother had gardens and everything was fresh. And when I go to Uganda and, they have these farms and people are growing, and so the food feels clean when you eat it.
Absolutely.
And, our culture is a little addicted to sugar and all kinds of interesting processed foods that don't support, I'm sure, the microbiomes.
No, in fact, you could actually say, and my daughter asked me this, she said, Mom, what if our mental health crisis, where depression is the number one leading healthcare issue, both in the world, but especially in America, and especially with teen depression, what if poor food choices created our mental health problem? And if we changed our food to eat better food, like the 23 ingredients or, the things that I've described, we then change that mental health picture to health, because it's going to crank you. Your body has the chemistry. We've just never fed it to trigger that chemistry. And a whole new field of psychiatry, for anybody who's in the field of psychiatry out there, has opened up, and it's called the psychobiome. And it came out of Cork, Ireland, from Dublin University. And scientists there said, this is a new field of psychiatry, because it traces the chemicals that are created in your microbiome in your gut, and as they affect the chemistry in your brain.
Yes.
And so, and it will even, impact relationships. for example, Joel and he buys most of the food. I source from what he buys. I buy a few extra specialties. And we have the same, basically, microbiome, even though we don't eat at the same time. He eats 1 meal a day. I eat 2 meals a day. He eats 1 meal a day because for 22 hours, his body is cleaning house. I eat 2 meals within 8 hours in a day, like lunch and dinner. And then for 16 hours, my body is doing house cleaning. It's called intermittent fasting. And that's one of the fastest ways. You obviously know about it, and your listeners probably too. And those are the secrets, which are not secret because our families did it for generations. And we're just remembering that you could say, I'd like my prescription to be food, please. And if they turn on 23 ingredients, they'll pop up the menu planner, which puts up guardrails and says, choose 9 vegetables, choose 3 fruits, choose 5 good fats, and choose 2 proteins for your daily meals, the 2 meals.
Well, you're just so inspiring. Okay, so with the 100 successful social impact projects, and how did you find time to write 18 books?
Because when I wrote the first probably 10 by myself, and because also, you can see my age. I'm a gray-haired senior, and once my children went to college, and everybody lives within 20 minutes of either driving or walking from my home, and so I can go there for dinner if I wanted this or that, and the just the ability to have time after raising a family and be able to sit there for like 3 hours in the morning, and just early, and because I'm an early riser, and I wake with the sun, and to be able to do that allowed me to write some great books. Anybody who goes to 10traits.org will see the books that are listed there. But the last 8 came by, I met Dr. Joel in 2010. We met on the day before Valentine's, and we moved in and started living together a week later.
I love it.
Yeah, I mean, it was just like, the chemistry, at that age, I was 65, he was 66. He was a scholar. He taught medical students at Baylor College of Medicine in Houston, Texas. He developed a School of Nutrition and Stress Management in Houston. And he just had this lifelong fascination, no children, never got married. And he basically knew everything about everything, but nothing about relationships. And so when he saw me, I came into the cafe, the Trident Cafe in Boulder, and it was full. It was snowing on that evening before Thanksgiving or Valentine's Day in 2010, 6 weeks into the new year. And I pulled a chair up in front of this fireplace there with a pot-bellied stove. And I was reading a book, and I happened to look up, and his eyes caught mine. And at that moment, there was nobody sitting with him. And there's usually people from all over the world who come and ask his advice about health. And he looks at me, and he takes this fickle finger of fate, points at me, points at the seat beside him, and that was it. I never left. And because of that, I thought, this is ridiculous. I have to come down to the Trident to see you every day. Why don't you just move in with me? And so he left his apartment and just moved in with me. And he probably spent the first 2 years, he moved in with 2 children, 3 grandchildren, 3 dogs, and 2 birds flying free. I opened the cage and they'd fly free in the house. He was overwhelmed, overstimulated, overloaded. And probably the first 2 years, it took his neuroplasticity that long to say, I can handle this, I can do this. And he did. And
well, what an incredible love story.
And so what the Guardian is actually picking it up for our Christmas edition, how we met. But I will say that, for that time, he was really challenged, but he stuck with it. And I was learning so much that every time we took a trip, like to California for a couple months in the winter, some of my other family lives out there, I would ask him all these questions and he would answer. And it was like a rolling college on wheels. And when we got to California, to Ojai, I then took what I had remembered and I asked some questions and I just recorded his answers And then I edited the book. And so I wrote 8 books just based on interviewing him, adding my experiences wrapped around his, and done. We self-published those because they were coming out so fast.
Well, that is so inspirational. And what I am so in awe of is that both of you said yes, and the
Yes.
rational mind didn't get in there and go, well, what about this and what
No
about that?
critic. And I will
Yeah.
say, to his amazing credit, he has never criticized me. He's never said, I wish you would do this or that. What he does is role models. He role models. And if I get it, or I'll say, how come you're doing that? And he'll tell me the logic behind it. And then it's like, oh, I understand now, I can do that too. Why are you eating this, or why are you doing that? But he's never criticized me. If he's in a conversation, he has people from 18 countries showing up at his table. He's been there all through COVID. He's been there because we didn't go to California or travel. He is gone every day from like 4 o'clock till 7:30, and people just show up to get free advice at his table. And it's quite remarkable. But it's like, I had never met anybody who knew so much about nutrition and education. And I was a colorectal cancer survivor before I met him. I was a high stage 3. And I asked surgeons, I asked emergency room docs, I asked anybody that I knew. Nobody knew anything in 2008 about how to feed the microbiome, how to create nutrition that would keep you from getting a reoccurrence of colorectal cancer. And he just talked me through the whole program. And we don't even go to doctors anymore. I mean, I have no reason to go. They asked me to do this. That's like, why? Because I'm so healthy. We have 0 medications. We just thrive on the food we eat. We do daily exercise. We do meditation. We do yoga type exercises at home. We do deep breathing. We just stay in community. All those pillars that you talk about in your program to help awaken people. So I really think that for the awakened mind of women, the recognition that eating better food, or eating a high, like basically a dinner, lunch or dinner salad with high fats and protein on top, is the way to move into the direction of peace of mind, which equals peace on earth. Because if we each ate better food and achieve peace of mind, because the microbiome is creating and cranking chemicals out that go to our brain and say, relax, feel well, feel happy, go get that job. If you can learn to drive your own body chemistry, and this is my goal with women, empowering them, is teaching them how to drive their own body chemistry in any direction they choose in order to achieve the goals they set. So, but it's really all based on being healthy. So health is really the number one, along with eating protein. Eating protein is number one. And that's a whole nother story. It's in one of the books we've written, but
Well,
it's all very exciting.
It's very exciting. How do people find you?
Well, they can go to 23ingredients.com, the word 23 or the number 23, and then ingredients.com, and they'll connect to everything we do there. 10traits.org is where my books are. And those are like resources and so on. But the ingredients are there, the digital tools are there, and the prescription, food as a medical prescription is there.
Well, you're so inspiring, and it's so wonderful. And ladies, if you've been thinking about conscious aging, hello, you're looking at it. So I asked the same last question of everybody on my show. And the question is, this show is called Woman Awakening. What do you think is the most important thing about women awakening on the planet at this time?
Oh my gosh, parenting the planet. Anything women can do, oxytocin, the first suckle of a baby at the mother's breast triggers that lifelong mother-child bond. And it's that oxytocin that women have for nurturing, for community, for collaboration, for fine point discrimination, that needle point that notices something's out of place or notices something needs to be planted there or whatever. And it's, to me, that is, really, really important. And these traits are really parenting. And when men become good parents, they express the empathy, they express the compassion. There was a picture of a zookeeper with a baby gorilla that had lost its mother and was dying, and he just embraced it, and it adopted him as his mother, and it came back to life. It's that when you have either the masculine traits or feminine, using compassion, and of course then the mother will fight to the death like a she bear, so she becomes the fighter and will defend her child or children from harm and lift the tree off them, if something falls. They're heroic. But imagine doing that with, and our training programs do that. We actually have training programs in applied community food security, how to get more nutrition from your meals, because a lot of people don't realize that they may be eating the best organic food, but it's not getting through the garbage in their gut system or upper GI system to get into their bodies. And so the ideas of eating the better food, tuning up their GI system, is all part of this healing process. And when you look at the land, you are creating community food security that ties all the food sources, and people who do that together. You're creating better food because you're knowing how to source better nutrition, just like our grandparents did. And then we actually teach people how to create that 23 ingredient menu planner. And that's where the first food responders come in, because the million meals were created by a commercial kitchen we set up. And we had to bring in like 9 to 11 people that we trained and lifted out of poverty to train as first food responders. And all the meals we served, those almost 1 million meals, were fiber rich. We have videos that go with the training, and they see what it was like to do that. We also we have things on childcare and farms, where it shows if your children end up lucky enough to go to a farm where they learn how to plant seeds and grow their own food and prepare it, they're also blessed.
Well, you're just wonderful. Thank you so much for being on this show.